So I've had a lot of people ask me about how I feel about the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And it's taken me a lot of time to process. And it's not because I feel like it's convoluted or confusing. I actually feel like I walked away with a clearer perspective on where the story is going, if what I have perceived is correct. And I do hope to do kind of a definitive playthrough retrospective later on in time, but I'm doing a second playthrough to kind of pick up the pieces and figure it out. I want to preface my experience with remakes ending before I go into this, though. When I first beat Remake, I did so around the time that the Yuffie DLC released. I had actually sat down and watched the Yuffie DLC because it was really quick, and so seeing the end of Remake, seeing the end of the DLC, it kind of gave me this extra piece that it felt like nobody else agreed with me on. I felt like a lot of people were obsessed with this concept of multiple timelines. And so when I sat down and said, hey, I think that Zack is in the Lifestream, that he is dead, it immediately got dismissed. But when you see the presence of multiple stamps, it ends up becoming undeniable that there are multiple timelines indeed. The thing that I feel like not a lot of people have sat down and kind of spoke on is that one of these ideas does not cancel out the other. The ending of Rebirth itself was something that I always knew was going to be ambiguous. I've always said the biggest fault of this series is the fact that it's told in parts, because it has to be written in a way to have cliffhangers, much like a television show. The biggest confusion that I have seen with the people who have beat it so far is what does everything mean in the end? I think there's a lot to unpack and a lot of different potentials at once. A few key components to understanding the end as clearly as you can is to recognize that there are several different things at play. Timelines, Lifestream, Genova, and Cloud's fractured psyche. I think people have been so busy butting heads over if it was the Lifestream or Multiverse for so long. As I said before, I think that concept of both being true at once was missed. People thought that at the end of the remake, another timeline was created in which Zack lives instead of dying, as he does in the original game. Something about that never really made sense to me. All of the shots in the end sequences of Remake and the DLC had this ethereal air to them. This very much kept me locked into these bits we saw being in the Lifestream before starting Rebirth. Going into the start of Rebirth, I allowed myself to have an open mind to whatever happens. I'm just here for the ride. But I did find multiple instances of very interesting dialogue. Cosmo Canyon ended up being a very large source of interest for me. Have a listen to this Cosmo Canyon NPC dialogue.
So, my parents are no longer with us. Here, that is. But I believe they're still out there, on another plane. I've been reading a bunch of theories about this alternate world in the hope of going there someday. And over the course of my studies, I stumbled across a fascinating theory. It addressed the issue of what the Lifestream is, arguing that spiritual energy is actually a manifestation of our knowledge and memories. Like I said, it's a fascinating theory, but it's incomplete. What about our hopes and dreams? We remember those, don't we? So what if spiritual energy doesn't distinguish between our real, lived memories and the unrealized desires buried deep in our hearts? What if coming into contact with that energy allowed us to peer through the looking glass, so to speak? It's just an idea, but I hope to find the truth someday.
Well, isn't that splendid?
I joked instantly about this being the promised land. But what if that's true? In death, we create our own promised lands through the desire we had in life. Having a strong enough will may create its own existence in which you seek to accomplish what your desire is until finding peace and moving on. All of us being what makes up the shared consciousness of the Lifestream. In Rebirth, we see the existence of multiple timelines and how some even come to an end. Biggs feels like he serves the purpose of showing how this works. There are a lot of parallels to Final Fantasy X that exist throughout all of Rebirth. Personally, I need to go back and play FF10 so I can better explain a lot of the nuances with the Dream of the Faith and how the Far Plane and Unsent work. But at just face value, there's a lot of overlap in this, and there always has been. I predict Zack's purpose, in the end, may end up being much like the main character of Final Fantasy X. I think he has a very strong will to live, and may not have realized that he is dead yet. And so he's traversing the spiritual plane within the Lifestream, unable to distinguish between his lived memories and a desire buried deep in his heart, much like the Cosmo Canyon NPC stated. I know then when you talk about the Lifestream, everyone kind of wants to discuss, oh, well, what about Sephiroth though? Because he exists in all of the versions of these timelines as well, and he seems to have this esoteric knowledge of everything that's going on. Well, let's go off of what we do know, and that's where Sephiroth is located at this point in time in the OG game. Sephiroth falls into the Lifestream during the Nibelheim incident and is never again seen until you encounter him at the Northern Crater. I think this is why he is capable of tainting the Lifestream and traversing the different layers, much like Genova is able to with the hooded figures as they carry pieces of her body over the land. Of course, there's probably way more to it, but again, I just feel like this is a perspective I'm not seeing discussed. The bigger thing is what is going on with Cloud. Well, I think Rebirth has done a really amazing job at peeling back the intricate layers of what truly is the best plot twist in the series. And that is Cloud's Lifestream sequence. I do think a lot of what he is seeing has to do with his heavily altered mindset. We know Cloud is a hollow version of himself, even being called a puppet by Sephiroth. Perhaps this is why he is so easily manipulated and a vessel for outside influence. Why exactly this has happened to him and why the Whispers exist tend to be one of the greater mysteries left within the game. This may go completely unhinged until the Lifestream sequence happens. I could see this sequence essentially putting together all of the broken pieces via the hopes and dreams of his fallen comrades. I think that Aerith's fate is going to remain as a point of conflict as how people have interpreted her end until we get to part 3. Seeing how Cloud perceived Aerith's death is definitely a peek into how fractured his mind is currently. And I'm kind of on the fence about it too. I do think that there's a larger chance that she is no longer with us, but does that mean that she's not going to play an important role in the rest of the game? Absolutely not. I think that Aerith was always important even after Disc 1 in the original. In conclusion, I have walked away from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth with a lot more confidence than I did from Remake. I think that the way that Rebirth ends makes it seem very clear that we are still on the path to the original story of Final Fantasy VII, that so many people were worried were going to be deeply changed. Obviously, there are going to be bits and pieces that are altered here and there, but I think this is a scenario in which we as the fans, specifically fans of the OG game, get to have our fun and relive this game in modern graphics, and the developers get to have their fun and tell the story they always wanted to and explore other avenues. Once I do a more comprehensive breakdown of each part of the game as I experienced it, you'll see that I definitely have some gripes with the way they chose to tell things. I don't think that this is a perfect game by any means, But I think it's a lot more clear where the direction is at the end of Rebirth versus where it was at the end of Remake. I definitely can see why other people may be discouraged, though. And again, I think this is just a unfortunate side effect of this being told in parts. Anyways, thank you for listening to me spew my mind throw up into existence. This is really hard for me to do because I feel like it's so difficult to articulate coherently exactly what I think has been going on, especially when right now there's so many other people putting their ideas out there too. I am someone that over time, as more and more information comes out, wholeheartedly admit my mind may change. But that's what's fun about this entire process. So I can't wait to hear what everybody else thinks about the end of this game. I think the original will always exist as the original was. And now we have this new interpretation that still at the same time broke my heart. Thank you again for watching. And if you didn't already, like, subscribe, do all that other stuff. Bye.